We would like to show our respect and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, of elders past, present and emerging on which this recording takes place.
Wow, welcome
back.
Dark and creepy things. Oh wait, we did that wrong. I did that wrong. Sorry.
Yeah.
Dark
and
creepy. Not and. It's not and.
Dark and
creepy
things
with
Frank
and
Scout. Yay. Episode 35.
Is it?
Yes, this is episode 35.
Ooh. It's my turn.
It's your turn.
Scout's turn.
Thank
you to our patrons, our two patrons. Who've put up with our absence. Thank you so much.
We're back, bitches.
Ooh,
back and better than ever.
Yes. Because people have been still listening and finding our podcast, which is great. So that's cool.
Weird. How many all-time downloads have we got?
I forget right now. I could quickly look. What have you been up to, Frank? How's the COVID treating you?
Well,
you don't have it. You've been tested.
I don't have it. I have been tested. I would say go get tested if you think you might have it, but fuck, it hurts. They get a swab, and it's probably be about maybe 10 centimeters long, and they shove it down the back of your throat, tickle the back of your throat, you feel like you're going to vomit, and then they shove it down the back of your nose. So, the back of your nose hurts more than anything, and they wiggle it around in there, and you feel like, it's so bad.
It'll be worse having it.
It'll be worse having COVID. Just go get fucking tested. But other than that, COVID, ISO's been treating me okay. I have work, which is good compared to some people. I'm missing roller derby a lot though. Every time I look at my calendar and there's a roller derby event I would have been going to, I think I cry a little inside.
This weekend would have been TGSS.
Biggest derby tournament in the Southern Hemisphere.
Yeah, that happens every 2 years, but it's not. Sadly not this year.
Sadly not.
Yeah, it would have been
very sad.
It was just approved for Media Pass as well when COVID struck.
Oh, were you?
Yeah,
I remember you telling me that.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
So frustrating.
Like, yes, we would love to have you come take photos and stuff, and if it goes ahead, but stay tuned. I was like,
Yeah, we just found out that one of our other tournaments has just been cancelled for the rest of the year as well.
Has it been announced?
Yeah, it has been announced. It was announced today.
Well, I didn't see that.
Well, you're not on Facebook.
Maybe they should email people.
Well, then they'd have to email like 300 people.
Yeah, well, not everyone's on Facebook.
I know that, darling, but it's the easiest...
I wouldn't have known until you...
It's the easiest way to communicate.
It isn't, though.
It is, though. It really is the easiest way. Anyway.
All right. It took me a while to hack them in. But I'm in. All right. We got into the All Variety Podcast email address and Podbean account. And, in the last 7 days, we've actually had 42 downloads of our podcast.
There you go.
Last 30 days, 122. So people
are still listening to us.
Yeah, we should... I do mention it sometimes. Maybe it's my... creepy students who are listening to me talk. It's bizarre. But we've
you do have a good, nice, talky lecturer voice.
Do
you're nice to listen to.
Am I?
Yes.
Well, that's how this started, really. I find my voice not nice to listen to.
But remember, what you hear from you is very different to what other people hear. Because you hear it through the vibrations of your bones and your flesh.
I just feel like my flesh face is like on my face.
I feel like my flesh face is on my face. Where else would it be?
I don't know, it just feels too fleshy on my face. Like, I speak and it's just like stuck in my... I wish we were videoing, so...
Where else would your flesh face be?
I don't know, but it just sounds very fleshy, my voice, my face.
Your voice sounds fleshy.
Yes.
Okay, sure.
And we've hit over 4,000 all-time downloads.
Yay.
So there you go.
That's lots.
Pretty good. We're sitting at 4,048.
That's
thank you.
That's
so
like
much.
over 100 downloads per episode, really, because we're up to 35, and that's 4,000 downloads. It's only over 100 downloads per episode.
Oh, take your word for it because
math. What's the number 1 episode? I'm always in key.
Well, I've got it so far. It's showing me that it's the top 10 episodes for the past 30 days.
Right.
Which is interesting, like past 30 days, because obviously people there's been a spike in our listens. So
what have they been listening to in the past 30 days?
Episode 28, Kelly Lane.
Right,
I still maintain it's Kelly Lane herself. Then we've got episode 33, the Lesbians, and War Children.
Oh, yeah, that was a weird
That was the one we
episode.
posted on New Year's Day this year.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that's had 13 downloads recently. Episode 14, Murder of Junko Furuta. I think that's...
Junko Furuta has been very popular.
Yeah, it's
which is
pretty graphic.
bizarre because it's the most graphic episode I've done.
Well, I might be matching you with a graphic one.
Oh,
today.
no.
Yeah, it's up there to the point where, I'm usually like, well, people, this is dark and creepy things. We shouldn't need to really put a trigger warning on it.
But this
I
one?
think so. Same with episode 14 with Murder of Junko Furuta. I think I might have to. Just because it's that whole, I'll get to it. It probably needs a warning. I wouldn't recommend it's for even creepy children to listen to.
Yeah, right.
I know we have some friends and listeners who have, some young tweens that are into this kind of stuff, much like I was. Probably would, heed some warning there because it's pretty violent. Then we got episode 23, the Momo Challenge and Blue Whale Game. I've forgotten about these. And then episode 22, Aunt Thelly and the Thellium Poisoning. And then episode 30, The Family. We've got episode 15, Death from Laughter. Episode 2, The Gibbons Twins.
The Gibbons Twins.
Episode 29, Unit 731, Experimentation and Warfare.
Oh, that was awful.
And then episode 7, Armin Muse and Consensual Cannibalism.
Oh, yeah, I was thinking about that episode the other day.
I was too, because I think my creepy students and I were talking about consensual something. Not right. Maybe consensual skin eating or something. And then...
You should see my face right
now.
It just changed. I was like, what?
Not of each other, but that if you got permission from someone... much like how we... And then that...
Why would you want to? But why would you want to eat someone's skin? It's not the most
skin eaten.
It's not a very tasty part of the body.
How do you know?
Do you eat other animals' skin?
People do eat other animals' skin.
Yeah, but like chicken skin, and that's it.
Pork skin. It's crackly.
Bacon.
Yeah, see?
It's the one thing about vegetarianism that I miss is bacon. I love bacon.
You're like a stereotype of other people against vegetarianism.
I am. However,
but what about bacon?
Bacon is delicious, but murder is not.
Well,
that's my new catchphrase. Bacon is delicious, but murder is not.
I think you should put that on a t-shirt. Or a bumper sticker.
I'm making a bumper sticker that says bacon is delicious, but murder is not. Do you want me to put it in my... I do. I want you to make a bumper sticker.
I'll design it and I'll put it in my Red Bubble store.
Yeah.
What was it again?
Bacon is delicious, but murder is not.
Yeah, okay. We'll do that.
That doesn't sound very catchy, but I don't know.
I think it is.
Okay.
Anyway. It's important.
Your article you said was quite long, so we should probably get started.
Okay, true. Alright. Alright, let's do a warning. There is child murder, and abuse and torture in this episode.
Okay.
So, if you're not into that, probably skip this one.
Yeah.
It's pretty full on.
And by the sounds of it, you're saying if you have children under the age of 16, I probably would skip this
Just
too.
Sensitive children, I guess. Use your discretion. If you don't want children listening about children being abused or tortured and murdered, then probably skip this one. Go for one of our other classic episodes. This is an article that was inspired by me randomly choosing a film to watch the other night with the purpose of going to sleep. Everyone who knows me knows I have sleep issues ever since I was a kid, so I just watch films. Usually put on a horror film, I'll fall asleep. Put on something about crime, I'll fall asleep. This did not happen because the movie was actually good. It was called An American Crime, and it's from 2007, I believe. And I thought, it's got a young Ellen Page in it. All right, I'll watch this.
That weirds me out that Ellen Page was in a horror film, though.
No, it wasn't horror, it was a crime film.
Oh, yeah, but that's not a genre I really put Ellen Page into.
She was very convincing as a child being tortured and abused.
Wow, that's intense.
It was really intense. I did not fall asleep. I was wide awake, clutching my iPad and hoping you wouldn't wake up and see glimpses of it.
But when I fall asleep, I'm like a dead person. So.
Well, yeah, luckily, because yeah, it was pretty full on, but really well done. And I'm like, how have I not seen this film before or even heard of it? And then it wasn't until the end, in the credits, it's based on a true story. I'm like, holy shit, what? It's based on a true story, which I think I forgot about at the start. Yeah, like you just get into the film, and it was really well done. And I was like, wow, okay, based on a true story, huh? I'm gonna have to look this up.
Yeah. All right.
So I did. The character played by Ellen Page in this film her name's Sylvia Likens.
Sylvia Likens. So what's the article
So the
entitled?
article is called Murder of Sylvia Likens.
Right, okay.
Yeah, massive article. Never come across this before. So there you go. So, but I mean, let's try cover the important. I've got the burps. Important stuff of this. To be fair, the little image of Sylvia Likens at age 16 doesn't really look like Ellen Page a whole lot.
No, she's pretty though.
Different face, but yeah. Well, it's still Ellen Page played the part really well. So good. Okay, so the murder of Sylvia Likens was a child murder which occurred in Indianapolis, Indiana in October 1965. Likens, age 16, was held captive and subjected to increasing levels of child abuse and torture, committed over a period of almost 3 months. I didn't realise it was such a short time. By her caregiver, Gertrude Banazuski. Many of Banazuski's children, because this woman had lots of children, and several other neighbourhood children, before ultimately succumbing to her injuries on October 26.
Right.
Yeah. Banazuski, her oldest daughter Paula, her son John, and 2 neighbourhood youths, Coy Hubbard and Richard Hobbs, were all tried and convicted in May 1966 of neglecting, torturing and murdering Likens. At the defendant's trial, Deputy Prosecutor Leroy New describes the case as, quote, the most diabolical case to ever come before a court or jury.
Wow.
And Gertrude's defence attorney, William C. Urbecker, described Likens as having been subjected to acts of, quote, degradation that you wouldn't commit on a dog prior to her death.
Right.
Like, you should not commit to do that to a dog anyway. They shouldn't do it to anyone.
I suppose his point was saying that you wouldn't do this to any living thing.
No. Like, it was absolutely horrendous.
Yeah.
The torture and murder of Sylvia Likens is widely regarded by Indiana citizens as the worst crime ever committed in their state, and has been described by a senior investigator in the Indianapolis Police Department as, quote, the most sadistic case he had ever investigated in the 35 years he served with the Indianapolis Police.
Wow.
Yeah. So this article covers like the background of both Gertrude, like the mother figure, the matriarch, and then Sylvia Likens, the month in which I guess a lot of this started in July 1965, the abuse, the escalation, the death, the arrests, the funeral, the indictments, the trial, the closing arguments. So I'm more interested than convictions, parole, aftermath, media like stuff, telling of this story in the media, including that film where I came across that. So it is a very lengthy article, which of course I'll post the link to. But I'm keen to get up to perhaps at least the autopsy.
Yeah,
the trial's less interesting for me.
Yeah, I'm more with the dark and creepy things. We assume that if someone is caught and tried for murder, it's pretty self-explanatory. Like,
and for what they showed on the film did go into that as well.
But more about like why, what actually happened.
Yeah, so we're interested. I'm definitely interested in telling about the what happened.
Yeah,
not so much the outcomes of it, but
because I mean the ultimate outcome is she died.
Yeah, and she was a fucking child. She was 16 and placed in the care of this woman and family. And so Gertrude Nadine Banazuski, nee Van Fossen, was born September 19, 1928 and died June 16, 1990. I hope she died a horrible death. Mm-hmm. What were you going to say?
Nothing. I was just laughing at her names. I'm sorry.
She married a Banazuski, but she was a Van Fossen.
Van Fossen.
Pretty... Okay, so she was born in Indianapolis, Indiana, to Molly Myrtle, nee Oakley, and Hugh Marcus Van Fossen Sr., both of whom were originally from Illinois and were of American and Dutch descent. Banazuski was the third of 6 children, and her family was working class. On October 5th, 1939, Berezowski saw her 50-year-old father die from a sudden heart attack. 6 years later, she dropped out of high school at age 16 to marry 18-year-old John Stephen Berezowski, who lived from 1926 to 2007, who was originally from Youngsville, Pennsylvania, and to whom she bore 4 children. Although John Berezowski had a volatile temper and occasionally beat his wife, the two would remain together for 10 years prior to their first divorce.
First divorce?
Interesting.
Right, okay.
Following her divorce, Berezowski married a man named Edward Guthrie. This marriage lasted just 3 months before the couple divorced. Shortly thereafter, Berezowski remarried her first husband, bearing him 2 more children. I was going to say, earlier when it said they had 4 children, I'm thinking, I'm sure in that movie there was way more children than 4.
So far 6.
Yeah. The couple divorced for a second time in 1963. Maybe you should not be together.
Maybe not.
So this is now her 3rd divorce because she had another divorce to another guy.
There must be, I reckon there should be a limit. You've had 3 divorces, that's enough.
Yeah. Weeks after her 3rd divorce, Berezowski began a relationship with a 22-year-old named Dennis Lee Wright, who also physically abused her. She had 1 child with Wright, Dennis Lee Wright Jr. Shortly after the birth of his son, Wright abandoned Berezowski. Shortly thereafter, Berezowski filed a paternity suit against Wright for financial support of their child, although Wright was seldom able to pay for the upkeep of their son. Children are expensive, don't do it. In 1965, Berezowski lived alone with her 7 children.
7 children.
Paula, 17, Stephanie, 15, John, 12, Marie, 11, Shirley, 10, seriously like 1 a year, James, 8, and Dennis Lee Wright Jr., 1.
Oh my god, a 1-year-old.
17, 15, 12, 11, 10, 8, and 1.
Oh my god.
It goes without saying that those older kids would have been looking after the younger ones, especially the baby.
Even in a family that is functional, you would still have that.
Oh, for sure.
For that many kids.
Yeah. Although 36 years old and 5'6" inches.
She's 36 and has a 17-year-old.
Yeah, because she got married to that guy Berezowski. Yeah, when she was 16 and he was 18.
God.
Yeah.
She's 37 and she has
36
and has 7 kids.
Yeah.
Whew.
So, yeah, she was 5'6", so not tiny, it's like between our heights.
Yeah.
She's 168 centimetres tall. In height, she weighed only 100 pounds or 45 kilos.
Oh my god.
And she was described as being as a haggard, underweight, asthmatic chain smoker, suffering from depression due to the stress of 3 failed marriages, a failed relationship, and a recent miscarriage. In addition to the sporadic checks she received from her first husband, a former Indianapolis policeman, which she primarily relied upon to financially support her children. I mean, yeah, so they should have, 6 kids together?
6 kids.
Yeah. Berezowski occasionally performed odd jobs for neighbours and acquaintances, such as sewing or cleaning, in order to earn money. In the film, she was doing ironing jobs for people.
Right.
Berezowski resided in Indianapolis at 3850 East New York Street, where the monthly rent was $55 back then, which
would have been a lot.
I guess, yeah, especially if you don't have
$55
income.
in what, the 60s? Yeah, that's quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
It's not a small amount.
So that's about Gertrude Berezowski.
She sounds like a very traumatized woman.
Yeah, seriously, and to be like, she was played really well by Catherine Keener in the film, who was great in being John Malkovich. Actually, she was great. She's a really underrated actor, but she did look quite haggard and chain smoking in the film. Didn't come across as 45 kilos though, but
but still,
hard to tell. They did make her look hard done by and stuff. Yeah,
I mean, I will say this: being hard done by and having a life like that is no excuse. I assume for what is yet to come. No. But at the same time,
she's probably a bit messed up.
Oh yeah, you would be too. You've been married. You've been divorced 3 times. You have 7 kids. You've been abused by multiple men.
Yeah.
You left school at 16. Like there is a lot in your history.
I saw your father die of a heart attack in front of you.
Exactly.
And he was 50.
From that, there's not a lot there to set you up for a good life.
No. All right.
Anyway,
so let's move on to poor Sylvia. Sylvia Marie Likens, who was born January 3rd, or Capricorn, 1949, and died October 26, 1965, was the third of 5 children born to carnival workers Lester Cecil Likens and his wife Elizabeth Betty Francis. She was born between 2 sets of fraternal twins.
Interesting.
Well, they didn't show that in the film. Diana and Daniel, these names. Diana and Daniel, 2 years older than Sylvia. And then Jenny and Benny were 1 year younger. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I know.
Jenny and Benny.
I know. Only in the film they only showed Jenny as being her sibling. Which is, yeah.
Not the 3 others.
No, I had no idea that there was all these twins. Jenny Likens, so the one that was the twin with Jenny and Benny, and the one sibling that they showed in the film, Jenny. Jenny Likens had suffered from polio, causing one of her legs to be weaker than the other. She was afflicted with a notable limp and had to wear a steel brace on one leg. Yeah, they did show that in the film. Lester and Elizabeth's marriage was unstable. They often sold candy, beer, and soda at carnival stands around Indiana throughout the summer, moving frequently because they carnies, and regularly experiencing severe financial difficulties because they carnies. Back then, yeah, but now carnies can make life.
If you're interested about the life of carnies, I would recommend you watch You Can't Ask That, which is a series that ABC produced, and it's on iView. It's free to watch. And they have an episode on carnies. Yeah, and it's fascinating. And it's one of the episodes I still think about. But there's one question I wish they had asked is, what do you do about being on the electoral roll?
You keep bringing that up.
Because you don't have a permanent address. How are you on the electoral roll? But anyway, I might have to look it up myself. I've just never gotten around to it.
Yeah, what do you put on the electoral roll if you're a carny?
Yeah, because you don't have a permanent address.
Yeah, and I remember them asking, well, aren't you poor and stuff?
Yeah, they're like, no.
We're right. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
for living.
Exactly. Go on. So they're carnies and they're poor.
Yes. The Likens' sons regularly travelled with their parents in order to help out. So that's Daniel and Benny helped out. But due to concerns for their younger daughter's safety and education, they didn't particularly like Sylvia and Jenny travelling with them in this employment. What to Diana, who was a twin with Daniel?
Old enough to travel with them, I suppose.
Yeah. Both are true. Both girls frequently resided with relatives, often their grandmother, so that their schoolwork would not suffer while their parents and brothers travelled with the carnival. It doesn't say anything about the other.
That's pretty responsible, though. I'm happy with that. Like, in terms of parenting, that's pretty responsible.
That's what happens when the grandmother can't take care of them. In her teenage years, Sylvia Likens occasionally earned spending money by babysitting, running errands, and performing ironing chores for friends and neighbours, often giving her mother part of her earnings. She has been described as a friendly, confident and lively girl with long, wavy, light brown hair extending below her shoulders, and was known as Cookie to her friends. Yeah, I did remember in the movie her dad calls her Cookie. Another exuberant Likens always... I've read that completely wrong. Although exuberant, Likens always kept her mouth closed when smiling due to having lost a front tooth in a collision with one of her brothers during a childhood game.
Aww.
Oh, that's so interesting. That's how I lost the front chip on my front left tooth. Was playing with my brothers, and I think we threw matchbox cards at each other, and one clipped me in the mouth, and I ended up with a chipped tooth.
Yeah.
So I used to not smile
with your teeth. Yeah. I never used to smile with my teeth because my teeth are blocked, but... Yeah.
So what happens when you have brothers around your age? You have fights and chip your teeth, and lose teeth, apparently. She also had a fondness for music, in particular the Beatles, and was notably protective of her markedly more timid and insecure younger sister, being Jenny. On several occasions, the two sisters would visit a local skating rink, where Jenny would fasten a single roller skate to her strong foot, and Sylvia would lead her by the hand as they skated around the rink.
That's a bit cute.
They are very cute. Then we come to July 1965. By June 1965, Sylvia and Jenny Likens resided with their parents in Indianapolis. On July 3rd, their mother was arrested and subsequently jailed for shoplifting. Shortly thereafter, Lester Likens arranged for his daughters to board with Gertrude Baniszewski,
right,
the mother of 2 girls, with whom the sisters had recently become acquainted while studying at Arsenal Technical High School. Paula and Stephanie Benezuski, so the two older Benezuski kids.
Right.
At the time of this boarding agreement, Gertrude assured Lester she would care for his daughters until his return as if they were her own children.
Right, okay.
Shortly after the July 4th holiday, the sisters moved into 3850 East New York Street in order that their father and later their mother could travel to the East Coast with the carnival, with the understanding that Gertrude would receive weekly boarding fees of $20. It's expensive.
That is a lot.
To care for their daughters until they returned to collect Sylvia and Jenny in November of that year. So if her monthly rent was $55, Gertrude's monthly rent was $55, and she's going to get $20 a week for looking after the daughters.
That's $80 a month.
That more than covers her rent.
And that's for July to November. That's like 5 months worth.
Yeah. Lester's getting a bum deal. Yeah. During the initial weeks in which Sylvia and Jenny resided at the Benezuski household, the sisters were subjected to very little discipline or abuse. Likens regularly sang along to pop records with Stephanie, and she willingly participated in housework at the Benezuski residence. Both girls also regularly attended Sunday school with the Benezuski children. So it all started off nicely. Abuse. That's where it gets dark. Yo.
The dark and creepy.
Yeah, just dark. Although Lester Likens had agreed to pay Gertrude Benezuski $20 a week in exchange for the care of his daughters, these weekly payments gradually failed to arrive exactly upon the prearranged dates, occasionally arriving 1 or 2 days late. In response, Gertrude began venting her frustration at this fact upon the sisters by beating their bare buttocks with various instruments, such as a 1/4 inch thick, so 6.4 millimeter paddle, thick paddle.
Right.
So
okay.
it's like, what? That's like 6 centimeters.
No, 6.5 millimeters, not centimeters.
Oh yeah.
It's a quarter inch, yeah?
Yes.
So an inch is 2.5 centimeters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Still decent.
It's not small.
No. Making statements such as, well, I took care of you two little bitches for a week for nothing. Quote.
Right, okay.
On one occasion, so she's purely just doing it for the money.
Yeah.
On one occasion, in late August, both girls were beaten approximately 15 times on the back with the aforementioned paddle after Paula had accused the sisters of eating too much food at a church supper the household children had attended. Yeah, what I gathered from the film as well is that Paula was such a narc.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. By mid-August 1965, Gertrude Benezuski had begun to focus her abuse almost exclusively upon Sylvia, with her primary motivation likely being jealousy of her physical appearance. According to subsequent trial testimony, this abuse was initially inflicted upon Sylvia after she and Jenny had returned to the Benezuski residence from Arsenal Technical High School, as well as on weekends. This initial abuse included subjecting Likens to beatings and being refused sufficient food, which would gradually lead to Likens eating leftovers or spoiled food out of garbage cans. Oh, hello, Claudia. On one occasion, Likens was accused of stealing candy she'd actually purchased. On another occasion, in late August, Likens was subjected to humiliation when she claimed to have a boyfriend in Long Beach, whom she'd met in the spring of 1965 when her family lived in California. In response to hearing this, Gertrude asked if she had, quote, ever done anything with a boy, to which Likens, unsure of her meaning, replied, I guess so, and offered that she had gone skating with boys there and once went to a park on the beach with them and Jenny. Continuing the conversation with Stephanie Benezuski and Jenny, Likens mentioned that she had once lain under the covers with her boyfriend. Upon hearing this, Gertrude asked, quote, why did you do that, Sylvia? Likens replied, quote, I don't know, and shrugged. Several days later, Gertrude returned to the subject with Likens, Jesus, a bit obsessed, telling her, quote, you're certainly getting big in the stomach, Sylvia. It looks like you're going to have a baby, end quote.
Right, okay.
Likens thought Gertrude was kidding with her and said, yeah, it sure is getting big. I'm just going to have to go on a diet. However, Gertrude then informed her and the other girls in the house that whenever they, quote, did something with a boy, they would be sure to have a baby. She then kicked Likens in the genitals. Paula, herself overweight, unattractive, 3 months pregnant and also jealous of her physical appearance, then participating in attacking Likens, knocking her off her chair onto the kitchen floor, shouting, "You ain't fit to sit in a chair." Yeah, Paula and her mum are awful.
So Paula was 3 months pregnant?
Yeah. And it's
Paula know?
Yeah.
She was pregnant?
When the movie Paula knows, Gertrude, the mum, does not know.
Right, okay.
Yeah. On another occasion, as the family ate supper, Gertrude, Paula, and a neighbourhood boy named Randy Gordon Lepper force-fed Likens a hot dog overloaded with condiments, including mustard, ketchup, and spices.
Ugh.
Likens vomited as a result and was later forced to consume what she had regurgitated.
Ugh.
In what would be Likens' only act of retaliation, she spread a rumour at Arsenal Technical High School that Stephanie and Paula Banazuski were prostitutes. No, that's not cool.
No, that's not cool, but still, go on.
She did this because she was upset with the household singling her out for similar accusations. While at school, Stephanie was jokingly propositioned by a boy who told her that Likens had started the rumour about her. Upon returning home that day, Stephanie questioned Likens about the rumour and she admitted to starting it. Stephanie punched her in response, but Likens apologised to her in tears and Stephanie then also began to cry. However, when Stephanie's boyfriend, 15-year-old Coy Hubbard, heard about the rumour, he brutally attacked Likens, slapping her, banging her against the wall and flipping her backwards onto the floor. When Gertrude found out, she used the paddle to beat Likens. On another occasion, Paula beat Likens about the face with such force that she broke her own wrist, having primarily focused her blows upon Likens' teeth and eyes. Wow. That's what you get when you hit teeth and eye sockets.
Ow.
Yeah.
On both their counts, but...
Yeah. Later, Paula then used her cast on her wrist to further beat Likens. Gertrude repeatedly falsely accused Likens of promiscuity and of engaging in prostitution, delivering rants to Likens regarding the filthiness of prostitution and of women in general. Gertrude would later occasionally force Jenny to strike her own sister, beating Jenny if she did not comply. Coy Hubbard and several of his classmates frequently visited the Banazuski residence to both physically and verbally torment Likens, often collaborating with Banazuski's children and Gertrude herself. With the active encouragement of Gertrude, these neighbourhood children routinely beat Likens, sometimes using her as a practice dummy in violent judo sessions, lacerating her body, burning her skin with lit cigarettes in excess of 100 times, and severely injuring her genitals. To entertain Gertrude and her teenage accomplices, Likens was forced at one point to strip naked in the family living room and insert an empty Coca-Cola bottle into her own vagina in their presence. And they were glass back then too. With Gertrude stating to all present that this act of humiliation being for Sylvia to prove to Jenny what kind of girl you are. Quote, Gertrude Banazuski eventually forbade Likens from attending school after she confessed to having stolen a gym suit from the school after Gertrude had refused to purchase the clothing for her. For this act of theft, Gertrude whipped Likens with a 3-inch wide to 7.6 centimetre police belt. Yeah. I mean, Gertrude then switched her conversation to the evils, in quotes, of premarital sex before repeatedly kicking Likens in the genitals as Stephanie rallied to Likens' defence, shouting she didn't do anything.
Stephanie's one of the daughters.
Yeah, she's the second one.
So she's not too bad.
No, and in the movie she does kind of try to... But she obviously whoever comes to her defence is going to get abused by Gertrude. Yeah, exactly. Gertrude's just awful, and she obviously, she had premarital sex. That's how she ended up pregnant with Paula, the first one. Yeah, like, you know what I mean. Like she's she's obviously a woman hater, and it's like doing all this stuff. To anyone that she could, really. And poor Sylvia came along. Gertrude then burned Likens' fingertips with matches before further whipping her. A few days later, Gertrude repeatedly whipped Jenny with the police belt after she reportedly stole a single tennis shoe from the school to wear on her strong foot.
Right.
Or Jenny and her strong foot. Okay. I'm going to need something fun to lighten things up after this.
Yeah.
Alright, so the turmoil. The Likens sisters were fearful of notifying either family members or adults at their school of the increasing incidents of abuse and neglect they were enduring, as both were afraid that doing so would only worsen their predicament. Jenny, in particular, struggled against the urge to notify family members, as she had been threatened by Gertrude that she would herself be abused and tortured to the same degree as her sister if she did so. Jenny was also subjected to bullying by girls in her neighbourhood, in addition to occasionally being ridiculed or beaten whenever she alluded to Sylvia's situation. In July and August, both Lester and Elizabeth Likens would occasionally return to Indianapolis to visit their daughters, whenever their travel schedule afforded them the opportunity. The last occasion Lester and Elizabeth visited their daughters was in late August. On this occasion, neither girl exhibited any visible sign of distress about their mistreatment to their parents, likely because both were in the presence of Gertrude and her children. Almost immediately after Lester and Elizabeth had left the Banazuski household on their final visit, Gertrude turned to face Likens and stated, quote, "What are you going to do now, Sylvia? Now they're gone."
Right.
Which is a piece of work. On one occasion in September, the girls encountered their oldest sister, Diana Shoemaker, at a local park. So Diana does exist.
Diana does exist.
Twin to Daniel.
Yeah.
The ones that are older than Sylvia. Both Jenny and Sylvia informed Diana as to the abuse they were enduring at the hands of their caregiver on this occasion, adding that Sylvia was being specifically targeted for physical abuse, almost always for things she had neither said nor done. Neither sister mentioned the actual address where they resided, and initially Diana believed her sisters must be exaggerating their claims regarding the scope of their mistreatment. Unfortunately, that happens as abused children. No one freaking believes you.
That Diana would have been so mad at herself when she realised how real they were being. She would be like, oh my god.
Yeah, hopefully. Several weeks prior to this occasion, Sylvia and Jenny had encountered Diana in the same park while in the company of 11-year-old Marie Banazuski, and Sylvia had been given a sandwich to eat when she had mentioned to her sister she was hungry. Likens remained silent about the matter, although Marie revealed this fact to her family in late September. In response, Gertrude accused Likens of engaging in gluttony before she and Paula choked and bludgeoned her. The pair then subjected Likens to a scalding bath to, quote, cleanse her of sin, with Gertrude grabbing Likens' hair and repeatedly banging her head against the bath to revive her when she fainted.
Oh, God.
That Paula.
Oh, my God.
Shortly after this incident, the father of a neighbourhood boy named Michael John Monroe phoned Arsenal Technical High School to anonymously report that a girl with open sores across her entire body was living at the Banazuski household. As Likens had not attended school for several days, a school nurse visited 3850 East New York Street to investigate these claims. Gertrude claimed to the nurse that Likens had run away from her home the previous week and that she was unaware of her actual whereabouts, adding that Likens was, quote, out of control, and that her open sores were a result of Likens' refusal to maintain decent personal hygiene. Gertrude further claimed that Likens was a bad influence on both her own children and her sister. The school made no further investigations into Likens' welfare.
What?
Yeah, I know, right?
Okay. I will say this. This was the 60s.
Yeah, I know. But also Gertrude strikes me as a narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so when, I think at that point in the film where the school didn't make any further investigations in the welfare, and Gertrude was like, oh, she ran away and she's out of control. She was actually chained up down in the basement.
Ugh,
in the film. Yeah. and like pretty much out of it. Like she'd been beaten into a coma kind of thing. It was awful. The immediate neighbours of the Baniszewski family were a middle-aged couple named Raymond and Phyllis Vermillion. Both initially viewed Gertrude as an ideal caregiver for the Likens sisters, and both had visited the Baniszewski residence on 2 occasions when the girls had been under Gertrude's care. On both occasions, the Vermillions witnessed Paula physically abusing Likens, who on both occasions had a black eye, and openly boasting about her mistreatment of the child to them.
Okay, so she's a good caregiver, but she lets her child... No,
this is the sister. This is,
yeah,
I know.
Yeah, but lets her child beat the other one. What?
Yeah. Upon their second visit to the Baniszewski household, both observed Likens to appear extremely meek and somewhat zombified in nature.
Right.
Nevertheless, the Vermillions never reported Likens' evident mistreatment to the authorities. I remember they cut to shots of the woman in particular, the neighbour, being looking at, again, when there were screams coming from the house, she'd be outside watering her garden or something, and she'd be like that, and the husband was like, just leave it, don't get involved. Which, of course, I mean, still an attitude that people have this day, even though, we have ads on TV now saying, if you hear something, say something kind of thing. I mean, it's still an attitude of people to not get involved. They don't want to get involved. But anyway, so she didn't. On or about October 1st, Diana Shoemaker, his sister, discovered that her sisters were temporarily residing at the Baniszewski residence. She visited the property in an attempt to initiate regular contact. Gertrude, however, refused Diana entrance to her property, stating that she had received permission from their parents not to allow either girl to see her. So she's saying that the parents told her not to let
Diana
see Diana. She then ordered Diana off her property. Approximately 2 weeks later, Diana encountered Jenny by chance close to 3850 East New York Street and inquired as to Sylvia's welfare. She was informed, quote, "I can't tell you or I'll get in trouble."
Right.
End quote. Now we have the escalation. It's going to get darker.
Right. I don't know how it could get much darker, but okay.
Due to the increase in the frequency and brutality of the torture and mistreatment she was subjected to, Likens gradually became incontinent. Oh, that's what happens when you're getting close to death.
Yeah.
She was denied any access to the bathroom, being forced to wet herself. As a form of punishment for her incontinence, on October 6, Gertrude threw Likens into the basement and tied her up. Here, Likens was often kept naked, rarely fed, and frequently deprived of water. Occasionally, she was tied to the railing of the basement stairs, with her feet barely touching the ground. Yeah, see in the film, I think she's tied up and kept in the basement earlier than that, to the point where that's when the childhood kids and stuff were coming around and rallying around her and punching her and all that kind of stuff, and stomping on her. In the weeks prior to locking Likens in the family basement, Gertrude had increasingly abused and tormented Likens. She would occasionally falsely claim to the children in her household that either she herself or one of them had been the recipient of direct insults from Likens in the hope this would goad them into belittling or attacking her.
Right.
What an arsehole. This is... ugh. On one occasion, Gertrude held a knife aloft and challenged Likens to, quote, "fight me back," to which Likens replied she did not know how to fight. In response, Gertrude inflicted a light scour wound to Likens' leg. Physical and mental torment such as this was occasionally seized by the Baniszewskis to watch their favourite television shows. So when they weren't watching TV, they beat up Sylvia.
Right.
Neighbourhood children were also occasionally charged 5 cents apiece to see the display of Likens' body and to humiliate, beat, scold, burn, and ultimately mutilate her.
Jesus.
Throughout the period of Likens' captivity in the basement, Gertrude frequently, with the assistance of her children and neighbourhood children, restrained Likens before placing her in a bathtub filled with scalding water and rubbed salt into her wounds. Fucking yuck. In order to muffle Likens' screams, her tormentors would regularly place a cloth rag in her mouth as they tortured her. On one occasion, Gertrude and her 12-year-old son, John Jr., rubbed urine and feces from Gertrude's 1-year-old son's diaper into Likens' mouth, before giving her a cup half filled with water and stating the water was all she would receive for the remainder of the day. On October 22nd, John Banazuski Jr. tormented Likens by offering to allow her to eat a bowl of soup with her fingers, and then quickly taking away the bowl when Likens, by this stage suffering from extreme malnourishment, attempted to eat the food. Gertrude Banazuski eventually allowed Likens to sleep upstairs on the condition that she learned not to wet herself. Yeah, because I'm sure she knew how to not wet herself, but she was freaking dying. That night, Sylvia whispered to Jenny to secretly give her a glass of water before falling asleep. Okay, so she must have wanted water.
Right.
But then, of course, she would have wet herself.
Yeah.
So the following morning, Gertrude discovered that Likens had urinated herself. As a punishment, Likens was forced to insert an empty glass Coca-Cola bottle into her vagina in the presence of the Banazuski children before Gertrude ordered her into the basement. Now, this is a quote from testifying, I think. So, quote. Gertrude called Sylvia upstairs to the kitchen. Somehow the conversation got around to tattooing. Gertrude asked Sylvia whether she knew what a tattoo was. She said, "You branded my children, so now I'm going to brand you."
Right.
That was Richard Hobbs testifying as to Gertrude Banazuski's decision to carve an insult into Likens' abdomen on October 23rd, 1965. Shortly thereafter, Gertrude shouted for Likens to return to the kitchen, then ordered her to strip naked before proclaiming to her, you have branded my daughters, now I'm going to brand you." She began carving the words, "I'm a prostitute and proud of it," onto Likens' abdomen with a heated needle. She could have also picked something a lot less words than that.
Yeah.
When Gertrude was unable to finish the branding, she instructed one of the neighbourhood children present, 14-year-old Richard Hobbs, to finish etching the words into Likens' flesh, as she took Jenny to a nearby grocery store. In what Hobbs would later insist were short, light etchings, he continued to brand the text into Likens' abdomen as she clenched her teeth and moaned. Both Hobbs and 10-year-old Shirley Banazuski then led Likens into the basement, where each proceeded to use an anchor bolt in an attempt to burn the letter S beneath Likens' left breast. Although they implied one section of the loop backwards, and this deep burn scar would resemble the numeral 3. Why were they doing that underneath her breast?
Yeah.
So bizarre. Gertrude later taunted Likens by claiming she would never be able to marry due to the words carved on her stomach, stating, quote, "Sylvia, what are you going to do now? You can't get married now. What are you going to do?" Weeping, Likens replied, quote, "I guess there's nothing I can do." And she was then carried back to the basement by Coy Hubbard, who I believe was the boyfriend of Stephanie, the second eldest.
Right, okay, yeah.
According to the film anyway. Later that day, Likens was forced to display the carving to neighbourhood children, with Gertrude claiming she had received the inscription at a sex party. This is obviously a thing that Gertrude had known about herself, like...
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, well, why? She looked all this on this poor child. Like,
yeah.
That night, Sylvia confided to her sister, quote, "Jenny, I know you don't want me to die, but I'm going to die. I can tell it." The following day, Gertrude Banazuski woke Likens and forced her to write a letter as she dictated the contents, which were intended to mislead her parents into believing their daughter had run away from the Banazuski residence.
Right.
The content of this letter was intended to frame a group of anonymous local boys for extensively abusing and mutilating Likens after she had initially agreed to engage in sexual relations with them before they inflicted the extreme abuse and torture upon her body. After Likens had written this letter, Gertrude finished formulating her plan to have John Jr. and Jenny blindfold Sylvia, then take her to a nearby wooded area known as Jimmy's Forest and leave her there to die.
Okay.
I love how she, just makes her children and the other child, deflect these things and not freaking do it herself. After she had finished writing the letter, Likens was then again tied to the stair railing and offered crackers to eat, although she refused them, saying, Give it to the dog, I don't want it. In response, Gertrude forced the crackers into Likens' mouth before she and John Banazuski, so the son, beat her, particularly around the stomach. Alright, surely we're coming up to the end.
Surely. Now. Surely there's got to be no more.
Yeah, this reminds me of when you were reading Junko Furuta.
Yeah,
it's just how much more
never ends.
Freaking take she dies. You just want to be put out of her misery. It's fucked. Alright, so October 25 to 26. On October 25th, Likens attempted to escape from the basement after overhearing a conversation between Gertrude and John Banazuski Jr. pertaining to the family's plan to abandon her to die. She attempted to flee to the front door, although due to her extensive injuries and general weakness, Gertrude caught her before she could escape the property. Likens was then given toast to eat but was unable to consume the food due to her extreme state of dehydration. Oh yeah, it's so hard to eat when you're dehydrated. Gertrude forced the toast into her mouth before repeatedly striking her face with a curtain rod until sections of the instrument were bent into right angles.
What?
Yeah. Coy Hubbard then took the curtain rod from Gertrude and struck Likens one further time, rendering her unconscious. Gertrude then dragged Likens into the basement. That evening, Likens desperately attempted to alert neighbours by screaming for help and hitting the walls of the basement with a spade. One immediate neighbour of the Banazuskis would later inform police she had heard the desperate commotion and that she had identified the source as emanating from the basement of 3850 East New York Street, but that as the noise had suddenly ceased at approximately 3 a.m, she decided not to inform police about the disturbance. That's about the time when she bloody died. Death. By the morning of October 26, Likens was unable to either speak intelligibly or to correctly coordinate the movement of her limbs. Gertrude did move Likens into the kitchen and, having propped her back against the wall, attempt to feed her a donut and a glass of milk. Although she threw Likens to the floor in frustration, and Likens was unable to correctly move the glass of milk to her lips, she was then returned to the basement. Okay, so she didn't die at 3 a.m.
No.
She just passed out.
Claudia.
Oh, hello. Shortly thereafter, Likens became delirious, repeatedly moaning and mumbling. When Paula asked her to recite the English alphabet, Likens was unable to recite anything beyond the first 4 letters, or to raise herself off the ground. In response, because Paula's so lovely, Paula verbally threatened her to stand up or she would herself inflict a long jump upon her. Gertrude then ordered Likens, who had defecated, to clean herself. That afternoon, several of Likens' other tormentors gathered in the basement. Likens jerkingly moved her arms in an apparent attempt to point at the faces of the tormentors she could recognise, making statements such as, "You're Ricky and you're Gertie," before Gertrude tersely shouted, "Shut up, you know who I am." Minutes later, Likens unsuccessfully attempted to bite into a rotten pear she had been given to eat, stating she could feel the looseness in her teeth. Upon hearing this, Jenny replied, "Don't you remember, Sylvia, your front tooth was knocked out when you were 7. Jenny then left Sylvia in the basement to perform gardening chores for her neighbours in the hope of earning spending money. In an attempt to wash Likens, a laughing John Banazuski Jr. sprayed her with a garden hose brought to the house that afternoon by Randy Lepper at Gertrude's request. Likens again desperately attempted to exit the basement but collapsed before she could reach the stairs. In response to this effort, Gertrude stamped upon Likens' head, before standing and staring at her for several moments. Stephanie then decided to give Likens a warm, soapy bath, although Likens ceased breathing before she could be carried out of the basement. She was 16 years old. When Stephanie realised that Likens was not breathing, she attempted to apply mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, as Gertrude repeatedly shouted her belief to the children and teenagers present in the house that Likens was faking her death. Shortly after 5:30 p.m, Richard Hobbs returned to the Banaszewski residence and immediately proceeded to the basement. He slipped on the wet basement stairs and heavily fell on the floor of the basement, to be confronted with the sight of Stephanie crying and cuddling Likens' emaciated and lacerated body. Gertrude Banaszewski initially accused Likens of feigning death. She struck her body with a book, shouting "Faker, faker" to rouse her. Then, panicking, instructed Richard Hobbs to call the police from a nearby payphone.
Okay.
Does she not have a phone?
But also as well, why would you call the cops?
To say, I don't know, probably try to say she killed herself, who knows.
Anyway, go on.
When police arrived at her address at approximately 6:30 p.m, Gertrude led the officers to Likens' emaciated, extensively bludgeoned and mutilated body, lying upon a soiled mattress in one of the bedrooms. Before handing them the letter she had forced Likens to previously write to her dictation, also claiming she had been doctoring the child for an hour or more prior to her death, having applied rubbing alcohol to Likens' wounds in a futile attempt at first aid before she had died. She added that Likens had earlier run away from home with several teenage boys before returning to her house earlier that afternoon, bare-breasted and clutching the note.
Right.
Yeah, because that's going to fly.
Totally.
Clutching a Bible, Paula Banaszewski, she's such a piece of work as well, having stated to all present in the household that Likens' death was, quote, meant to happen, then glanced in Jenny's direction and calmly stated, quote, "If you want to live with us, Jenny will treat you like our own sister." What does that mean?
Right.
As previously instructed by Gertrude, Jenny Likens recited the rehearsed version of events leading to Likens' death shortly after 5:30 p.m. that afternoon to police, before whispering to the officers, and I liked this part in the movie, quote, "You get me out of here and I'll tell you everything." Yeah. The formal statement provided by Jenny Likens prompted officers to arrest Gertrude, Paula, Stephanie, and John Banaszewski Jr. on suspicion of Likens' murder within hours of discovery of her body.
Right.
You go, Jenny. Tell all. The same day, Coy Hubbard and Richard Hobbs were also arrested and charged with the same offences. The three eldest Banaszewski children, plus Coy Hubbard, were placed in the custody of a nearby juvenile detention centre. The younger Banaszewski children and Richard Hobbs were detained in the Indianapolis Children's Guardian's home. All were held without bail pending trial.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. Initially, Gertrude denied any involvement in Likens' death. Although by October 27, she had confessed to having known the kids, particularly her daughter Paula and Coy Hubbard, had physically and emotionally abused Likens, stating that, quote, "Paula did most of the damage." She's threw her own child under the bus there.
Right.
And that Coy Hubbard did a lot of the beating. Gertrude further admitted to having forced the girl to sleep in the basement on approximately 3 occasions when she had wet the bed. She became evasive when one officer stated the likely reasons Likens had become incontinent were her mental distress and injury to her kidneys. Exactly. That's what happens when you're dying, really.
Yeah.
Lacking any remorse, Paula signed a statement admitting having repeatedly beaten Sylvia about the backside with her mother's police belt, also once breaking her wrist on Sylvia's jaw, and inflicting other acts of brutality, including pushing her down the stairs into the basement, quote, 2 or 3 times, and inflicting a black eye. John Jr. admitted to having, quote, spanked Sylvia on one occasion, adding that most of the time I used my fists to abuse her. That makes it better.
Right.
He admitted to having burned Sylvia with matches on several occasions, adding that his mother had repeatedly burned the child with cigarettes. 5 other neighbourhood children who had participated in Likens' abuse, Michael Munro, Randy Lepper, Darlene McGuire, Judy Duke and Anna Sisko, had also been arrested by October 29. All were charged with causing injury to person, and each was subsequently released into the custody of their parents under subpoena to appear as witnesses at the upcoming trial. Autopsy. Jesus, imagine doing that. The autopsy of Likens' body revealed she had suffered in excess of 150 separate wounds across her entire body, in addition to being extremely emaciated at the time of her death. The wounds themselves varied in location, nature, severity, and the actual stage of healing. Her injuries included burns, severe bruising, and extensive muscle and nerve damage. Her vaginal cavity was almost swollen shut, although an examination of the canal determined that her hymen was still intact.
But that doesn't mean shit.
No, I know.
Anyway,
yeah,
I have a high horse about that.
Yeah.
Go on.
The autopsy also discredited Gertrude's assertions Likens had been 3 months pregnant, a prostitute and promiscuous.
Wait, so she was 3 months pregnant? Or she wasn't?
No. The also discredited Gertrude.
Oh, discredited. Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Gertrude being like, oh, she's pregnant and a prostitute and promiscuous. Moreover, all of Likens' fingernails were broken backwards.
Oh,
most
what?
of the external layers of skin upon the child's face, breast, neck, and right knee had peeled or receded. In her death throes, Likens had evidently bitten through her lips, partially severing sections of them from her face.
Oh my god.
The official cause of Likens' death was listed by coroner Dr. Arthur Keble as a subdural hematoma due to her receiving a severe blow to her right temple.
Right.
Both the shock she had primarily suffered due to the severe and prolonged damage inflicted to her skin and subcutaneous tissues, plus the severe malnutrition, were listed as contributing factors to her death.
That's why she went delirious, though.
Yeah.
She essentially had a stroke.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Rigor mortis had fully developed at the time of the discovery of her body, indicating Likens may have been deceased for up to 8 hours before she was found. Although Dr. Keble did note Likens had been recently bathed, possibly after death. That's when Stephanie grabbed her and bathed her. And that this art could have hastened the loss of body temperature and thus speeding the onset of rigor mortis.
Right.
Wow. Funeral. The funeral service for Sylvia Likens was conducted at the Russell and Hitch Funeral Home in Lebanon, which is not the country Lebanon, but near in Indiana, I think. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
On the afternoon of October 29. The service was officiated by the Reverend Louis Gibson, with more than 100 mourners in attendance. Likens' grey casket remained open throughout the ceremony.
No.
Wow. I wonder how they made her. Wow. With a portrait of her taken prior to July 1965 adorning her coffin.
What? Why would you open casket at a funeral like that? What?
In his eulogy, the Reverend Gibson stated, quote, "We all have our time of passing, but we won't suffer like our little sister suffered during the last days of her life." The Reverend Gibson then strode towards Likens' casket before adding, "She has gone to eternity." Following this service, Likens' casket was placed by pallbearers in a hearse and driven to the Oak Hill Cemetery to be interred. This hearse was one of a 14-vehicle procession to drive to the cemetery for Likens' burial. Her headstone is inscribed with the words, "Our darling daughter." Wow.
That actually makes me a bit mad, to be completely honest. She had over 100 people at her funeral, and not one of those people reported what they saw.
Or heard.
No, not one of them. Her older sister didn't say anything to authorities.
Yeah.
The people who heard her in the basement didn't say anything.
Yeah, the neighbours.
The people who saw her at the school.
Yeah.
The school did one investigation with a school nurse, and that was it.
Yeah.
The school nurse isn't going to get that information out of them. She's not an investigator.
No, it's, yeah.
That just makes me so mad.
They all failed her.
So many people went to her funeral, I bet you out of guilt.
Yeah, probably.
Out of guilt that they didn't notice anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's like... No, that makes me kind of mad.
Yeah.
It's just like...
Oh, trust me, even after I watched the film, I had trouble going to sleep straight away. I had to put something else on because I was really I was mad about it too.
And that's the end of part 1. Stay tuned for part 2.